everybody. Welcome to the Hidden Gems podcast. In this show, where we like to take on a streaming service and find the hidden gems on that service. And I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Ryan is here.
Hey Rachel, it's great to be back with you once again. We are officially in the month of March, and this month is just going to be nuts. It's going to be nuts for the both of us.
Yeah, this next week is super intense. By the time you listen to it, I will have experienced it all, so you'll see. But yeah, it's a very, very, very busy week for me because the following week I'm going to South by Southwest to Austin, and so I have to have everything done for both podcasts before that. So yeah, it's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, and Mandalorian started up this past week. That we've got John Wick Chapter 4 coming down the road. We got another Scream movie. We got 65. Not to mention Last of Us still continuing, coming to an end. There is like
yeah, in the world of Hallmark, there's a show called The Way Home, which is finishing up, which has been really good. It's a time travel family drama that's been very good. And then also we have this show called Ride, which we talked about in our preview, March-April preview, that's coming to Hallmark. So we've got that plus all the, movies, and it's just a busy time to be alive right now, I think.
Yeah, definitely a busy time. But I saw Creed. We're recording this on Sunday night, so Saturday night I saw Creed, and it was fantastic. I thought minus one plot convenience thing, I was like, really? Outside of that, the movie was mint. Like Michael B. Jordan still can do no wrong. Like acting, now directing, like you can't catch him at a bad moment with him. It's just nothing but W's as far as the eye can see.
Well, you can see my review. I reviewed it for this week on Good Things Utah, and you can see that on my channel. And I really enjoyed it. I think it was very well done. I liked the drama. I think there were a few moments where you could feel this was a first-time filmmaker, particularly in the fights. Everything was there were so many close-ups, and I wanted him to pull out a little bit more so we could see sort of the scope of the fight and what was really happening. So there were some, I thought, moments like that where you could kind of see his a little bit of a new voice, I guess, behind the camera. But other than that, and that wasn't really like a big deal. It was just something I noticed. But overall, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a whole video talking about this, but the experience in the theater it was not fun for me. Basically, like I said, I'm gonna have a whole video talking about it, but it was not fun because there were like 6 or 7 teenagers. They were in my row and they would not shut up. And not even like they were Snapchatting each other, and it's blatantly obvious that they were doing it. And like I did something I never do. I walked up and I got the manager. I'm like, do something, because I'm not the type of person to like blab and say like this is not right, something like that. It takes a lot to get me over that edge, and I not only approached the edge, but I went over it because, oh my goodness, I was just
darn, that sucks. I'm sorry.
Now, thankfully, I really loved the movie, and it was like really only bad in like the first half.
Did the manager help at all, or did they just go back to their ways?
No, he did. He actually went up there, gave him a warning, and went away. But then, like a couple minutes later, he was like, "All right, out," and they left.
Oh, he kicked him out.
And for like the second half of the movie, it was perfect.
Oh,
first half
well, good for that manager. He did his job.
From the beginning of the movie to at the point, I don't want to spoil it, but at the point where some letters are involved, you know the one I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
From that point, from the beginning to that point, it was just unbearable. But then when they got kicked out, from the first take stuff to the end, it was wonderful. So it was really the duality of man, the agony and the ecstasy.
Well, that's good. I mean, at least they did their job, and yeah, that's tough. That's really tough. I haven't usually had a big problem with teenagers. I get a lot of times it's older audience members that can be really loud, and I think they literally don't realize how loud they're talking. I remember I went to this like Susan Sarandon movie with Rose Byrne. I can't remember what it was called. And Susan Sarandon, and the entire time this old woman was commenting on the movie, like pretty loudly, being like, "Why is she going in that car?" You know, and all this stuff. I'm like, ah.
It's like if I wanted the commentary, I'd buy the Blu-ray. Like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah. So I mean, people get upset of people picking streaming over the theaters, but sometimes there's a reason. It's not always the best experience at the theater, unfortunately.
Thankfully, though, for me at least, it is few and far between. The
Yeah.
last time I've had a really wretched theater experience was in John Wick Chapter 2, and that was in 2017.
Mm.
So it's been a long time since I've been to like the point where like I've had it and just thrown my hands up and rush to be like,
Yeah.
yo, go yell at these people for me. You've got the power.
Most of the time it doesn't bother me too much, but there was one time I was watching The Secret Life of Pets, and this little girl was just like walking up and down the stairs, and her caretaker was just not caring about this, which I thought was bizarre. And then she just like sits down next to me, because I always sit on the aisle if I can. She sits next to me, and she was just like chatting it up. A really cute little girl. Trying to watch the movie, because I actually really wanted to pay attention, because I was going on rotoscopers for the podcast, and so I needed to know what was happening. But anyway, it was funny. Just a little girl.
Yeah, but it's a shame because they're like people like us who go to the theater and just like I turn my phone off, I'm like in the zone. Then there are
Uh-huh.
others who just cannot be asked. I'm just like it is frustrating as you could possibly expect, but I mean,
Yeah.
not much you can do about it.
I mean, it's one thing if you have your screen dimmed and you check something real quick. I don't care about that. But like when people are having full on conversations, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember one time I was seeing a movie, like I was off on a Friday and I was seeing a movie like Friday morning at like 10:30, 11 a.m. I can't even remember what I saw that day, but I forgot to turn my phone off and my mom was calling. I'm like, "Oh boy," and like this might be important. And so I hear the vibration, not hear it, but I feel it. I run
Yeah.
down the stairs and I walk outside and I take the call. And it turns out she was just checking on me. So I'm like, "Oh, hi, hey." And then I hang up, I go back and I watch it. Like
You're like,
that,
hiya.
it is that simple. Like it's that
Yeah.
simple, y'all. If you have to
Yeah.
take a call, just go outside and do it.
We've all had it happen once where our phone goes off, like we all should have like a modicum of patience with each other, but it's when people push it, that it's too much. But yeah, well, I'm glad that at least you got to watch most of the movie. I enjoyed it too. And they actually had two screenings here, which I'm really grateful, because the first one was on one of the big snowstorms, and I got about halfway there, and I was just like, "This is not happening." So then I turned around, and it probably took me another 45 minutes just to get home, going back, because it was snowing so hard. It wasn't just, I knew I could probably get there, but my fear was, what is going to be like in 2.5 hours when I'm driving home? Am I going to be stuck?
Yeah, and I've never dealt with snow personally, but from what I've seen in movies, you don't mess around with it.
No, no. And so I was, yeah, so I wasn't able to make it for that show. And so I was really grateful that they had a second screening on the 28th. So I was able to go and see it. And yeah, it's a pretty solid franchise, the Rocky franchise. And when we talk about our featured streamer today has all the Rocky movies that you can watch.
I
I
was
don't know
just
if you
about
saw
to
that.
say,
Yeah. But
you know,
maybe you should tell everybody what we're talking about today.
so we're talking about the service named after the planet that is no longer a planet, Pluto TV.
Yes.
And this got a bit of an ad campaign a little while ago with David Hasselhoff in it. That's how I heard it the first time
Mm.
around. And quite honestly, it's like Tubi and Pluto, they're here and no one talks about them. Well, Tubi's gotten a boost of relevance because of that Super Bowl ad where
Hmm.
where it's like, wait, did I sit on the remote? Like I've seen some of the memes and they've been funny, but it's like
Uh-huh.
free services where you could go premium if you really wanted to, but it's like scrolling through Pluto, I was like, how are they getting away with having some of these on here? It is
Yeah.
crazy.
I mean, we've talked about this many times before, but really, if you just had the free services, so you had Tubi, Pluto, Canopy, and Hoopla, just those, you would have a ton more. You'd have more entertainment at your disposal than you could watch.
Yeah, if you're someone who's not really into like the stuff on the beaten path and maybe want to like look for something different, those four you really can't go wrong, and you don't have to spend $1 on it. For
Yeah.
Hoopla and Canopy, you just need a library card and you're in.
Yeah. And Pluto, it's kind of fun because they have two options. They have the live TV full of all kinds of content that you're streaming live, sports, music, kids program, classic television, movies, comedy. I mean, there is tons of live TV that you can watch. And then they have the on-demand section, and it's all this all free with ads. But yeah, you can watch all 6 of the Rocky movies on here. They have tons of movies to choose from, things like Mean Girls, Gladiator. We'll talk about more. There's shows like Andy Griffith's Show, Perry Mason, Stargate, things like that, Twilight Zone, Three's Company. So there really is a lot for free. My favorite price.
Yeah, I was just gonna say your favorite price. But yeah, it's so it's so weird because I was just going through it thinking like, oh, like because I've been surprised by Tubi in the past, the couple episodes we did on that service, how easy I was to find stuff. But then you got stuff that's just garbage. Like just look at the thumbnail and the profile pic, and you're just like, not for $1 million trillion. But then you look at something like Pluto, and there's some of that too. But you also have other things on there where you're just like, how is this even possible that they
Yeah.
even have this on there?
Yeah, they have a whole section of movies directed by women. They have classics, like something like a New Leaf, with Elaine May. They've got Clueless. They have Bridget Jones's Diary. There's a lot that you can watch on here, not to mention the ones we will be talking about. So it was not hard to come up with 5 on Pluto TV. We'll definitely be doing it again. I don't know why it took us so long to do it.
Yeah, we need to do another Tubi one as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's always fun to do Tubi. All right, well, I guess we should dive in. You want to start? What's your first pick?
So my first choice is a movie from 2009, and this is kind of walking the tightrope in this one, but it's because it's a part of a very famous IP. But it's one that I have thought about quite a lot, and it is the
Mm-hmm.
2009 kind of sort of reboot of Star Trek, directed by J.J. Abrams. Now, J.J. Abrams gets a lot of flack, especially for Rise of Skywalker, which yeah, he earned some of it, but not all of it. But that's another story for another time. I've defended him on a couple of occasions. Super 8, which I think is severely underrated. I love that movie. And I think that he did a very admirable job with this version of Star Trek, a kind of a quasi sort of kind of reboot. But I think
Mm-hmm.
what he did in telling that story, I thought was very admirable. The opening like 15 minutes where we meet James T. Kirk's father, played by an incredibly young Chris Hemsworth, by the way. Like just like this is like a year before
I think it was
Thor.
like, yeah, I think it was one of his first mainstream roles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2 years before Thor, with a completely unshaven face, looking like a baby face, baby face Chris Hemsworth, and just seeing how he gets the name, and just the fact that James T. Kirk's father died in battle is just incredible to see. And then you got the sequence where little James T steals the car, which he steals it to the tune of Sabotage by the Beastie Boys, and that was before it got it got old to use that song, but that was my first experience with it, and it was awesome. Then you see Spock and his whole thing with having a human mother and a Vulcan father. That is handled, I think, very well. We get Eric Bana as the villain. We get Bruce Greenwood as Captain Pike, the predecessor to Captain Kirk. There's a great scene where after Kirk is kicked off the Enterprise and Spock takes over, and like Kirk just basically calls Spock out, saying like, "You're just afraid," and you're just like basically just calls him out, and then Spock just destroys him, like punches him, beats him up because Vulcans are stronger than humans physically, and so it's just a great scene. And then there's these little moments where Leonard Nimoy, rest in peace, as Ambassador Spock, like is there, and he's got a great scene. And then Zachary Quinto Spock has a moment with his dad where it's the whole thing of, because up until that point, the relationship between the mom and the dad was very much like we're trying to form the Vulcan human alliance here, and it's very strategic. But then it's the scene where he just says, "I married your mom because I loved her." That scene is just awesome. I cannot underscore it. So I think because of his work on Star Wars and other things, this movie has fallen way under the radar. And Star Trek Beyond was just kind of there, so maybe that has something to do with it. Like Star Trek is kind of in a weird place right now, but I don't. That's a whole nother.
Well, yeah, because you have also like Picard and Star Trek
Yeah,
Discovery, and yeah, so it's kind of in a weird spot right now.
yeah. But I will always defend this movie. I think it is very well done.
Yeah, I agree. When I did my top 10 of 2009, I included this in that top 10 because I do think it's a very entertaining film. I can understand why hardcore Trekkies, which I guess they don't really like to be called that, but whatever, hardcore Star Trek fans, that why they don't care for it, because it doesn't really fit the tone and feel of Star Trek. It's it's just definitely more like pulpy and action packed and things, whereas Star Trek is more of a philosophical, like kind of thoughtful show and movies, like the good ones. But then you have something like Wrath of Khan that also has some of that action and some of that rivalries between Khan and Kirk. And so I can understand why a lot of the Trek fans don't love it, but I think it's very entertaining, very well done, very well cast. And so yeah, I enjoy it. I think it's a lot better than the second one.
Oh yeah, yeah, because I love Cumberbatch to death, but it's
Mhm.
blatantly obvious that J.J. Abrams is like copied off of Wrath of Khan to be like copy, paste,
Yeah.
copy, paste.
Well, I mean, because J.J. Abrams loves his like mystery box, idea of telling a story and there being kind of this. He did that whole TED talk. I don't know if you ever saw that, where he talks about the mystery box.
Yes, I
And
did.
yeah, and so he loves that kind of thing. And so I think that's what he was trying to do with the second one. But yeah, I don't think it's a terrible movie, but like it's definitely a step down from this one for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And on another note, I remember thinking it because thinking about like my rankings, because I haven't seen all the Star Trek movies. I will one day. However, my favorite one, strangely, is First Contact, the first one involving the Next Generation crew with Patrick Stewart and LeVar Burton and Jonathan Frakes. Like
Hmm.
I love that movie to death.
I
It's
mean,
it's
that's
fantastic.
definitely the best of the next generation ones.
Oh yeah, I mean you got the weird one with Tom Hardy, and that just
Yeah, not
situation.
good.
So I haven't seen it, but I've heard nothing but good things. But just top to bottom, I would put First Contact up as the best Star Trek movie, period. It's
I can
fantastic.
understand that. Yeah, I mean, they always say with the Star Trek movies, just watch the even ones, the second, fourth, sixth, and so I think that there's some truth to that, at least with the original series. But yeah, it's I mean, if people want to hear my thoughts on the Star Trek movies, you should check out. I did years ago. I did with my friend Tom. We reviewed all of the movies, so that was fun. But yeah, I think it's a good one, 2009. Well, my first one is a rom-com that I'm surprised I haven't recommended before. At least according to my list, I hadn't. And it's one that's been copied many times since then, at least by Hallmark. And it's called Serendipity. And this stars John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale. And basically, they meet. They meet at the beginning of the movie, and they have this incredible day, and they make this, like, instead of giving each other's numbers, they make this deal that they're going to put all the information in this book, and then whoever's ever finds the book is then, like, it's fated or whatever, which is ridiculous, but nevertheless. And then, of course, once they're separated from each other, they're like, why did we do that? That was so stupid. And so then they're trying to find each other. It's cheesy, but I like both leads. And it's got Jeremy Piven, John Corbett, Molly Shannon, Eugene Levy. So, like, a really good supporting cast. Bridget Monahan. And yeah, so if you want it has a little bit of Christmas in it. So if you want an enjoyable, fluffy rom-com, then this is a good one, I would say.
I was going to say, when you were describing it first, I was like, this sounds like the ending to Before Sunrise. It's like, instead of just giving each other their phone numbers, they're like, we're going to meet at this exact spot 1 year from now.
Yeah.
And they don't.
Well, that's true in what's it called? With Cary Grant and Deborah Kerr, and Affair to Remember. They do that in Affair to Remember also. And you never do that. It always ends badly. But I don't know. Sometimes you're just in the mood for, or I'm definitely in the mood for a light, fluffy rom-com. So it was so cool last week. This is a different movie, but it just made me think of it that so there was this movie on the Up channel, Up TV, called Mixed Baggage. And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so good. And my friend Bree, co-host of the podcast, she loved it too. So we did this whole episode on it. And it's just been so cool, because now all of the actors have reached out, almost all of them, and we're like, thank you so much for your review. It made our day. And then, like, the writer had no contacts on social media, no agent or anything like that listed on her IMDb. So, and we really wanted to talk to her. And so I ended up found her profile on LinkedIn and messaged her on LinkedIn and said, hey, we want to talk to you. So then last Thursday, I ended up interviewing her, and it's just cool when, like, the platform you have allows you to make other people feel good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
anyway, so that was fun.
That's when you've officially made it, right there.
Yeah. It was so cool. And so then now I'm interviewing on Tuesday one of the couples, because it's about 3 different couples. So I'm really excited about it. It's gonna be fun. So I love a good rom-com. But what is your next pick?
So my next choice, here's the first hard left of the podcast. This is from 1997, and it is Scream 2. Now, I kind of picked this because, well, we got Scream 6 coming out very soon.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's this coming weekend. I believe it's today, by the time that this drops.
Yeah.
So that's convenient, but I'm still recommending it anyway, because I watched it for my Scary Mania series last year, and I was not expecting to like it as much as I did, but I really enjoyed it. And I won't spoil anything in case you, Rachel, or if anyone listening hasn't seen it. I won't say
I haven't. I've seen, the only ones I've seen are 1 and 5.
All right, I won't say a word either way, but
okay.
But basically, this picks up a couple of years after the whole stuff in Woodsboro. A movie has been based off of the book that Gale Weathers wrote. The movie's called Stab, which is just fantastic. It's a fantastic title. There's a great opening, like, in a movie theater, and I won't spoil it, but it is fantastic. It has Jada Pinkett Smith, who is surprisingly relevant around Oscar season last year. I can't figure out why, but but that particular scene was very good. And really, the Scream movies were basically Wes Craven trying to tear down the genre that he built, basically lampooning the slasher genre. But instead, he kind of did the opposite. He made it popular for a while there. And the Scream
Hmm.
movies are still uber popular to this day, to the point where we're getting number six or number
Right.
six.
Yeah.
So, and Wes Craven's sadly no longer with us, rest in peace, but the legacy in the series still goes on. I think what I like the most about this one is just the whole thing about sequels and how a lot of times they're not as good as the first. But surprisingly, I'd put this one on par with the first one. I think it's of very similar quality. There's a very healthy mystery there that kept me intrigued. Liev Schreiber is one of the new additions to the cast, and he stays on for a while, and I like him. Timothy Oliphant, and I believe one of his first roles shows up, and it's so weird seeing him so young, but it's nice to see him, and he would go on to do great things. Laurie Metcalf is in this, and she is surprisingly really good here too. And really, it's one of those things where I was like, all right, I think I got this figured out, but then I didn't. And for some, I'm sure like, oh, I've figured it out, but I honestly didn't. I was like, thought it was going to go one way, but no, it went a completely different way. So props to Scream 2 for swerving me in the way that it was meant to. Overall, while the first one is obviously a classic and it is heralded by so many, I'd put this as in the just as good, if not better category.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never seen it. So that sound, I mean, I have heard that though, that people pretty much think that all of the Scream films are decent. So that's rare. Usually there's one like terrible one in every franchise. So that's interesting. Well, my next pick is also I guess a horror movie in a way. It is Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Of course, this is based on the Sondheim musical. Stars Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter, Alan Rickman, and Sacha Baron Cohen. And I think that it's a pretty good. I've only seen the play one time, but I think it's a pretty good adaptation of this play. Like the singing is not the best, and so that's a criticism that you often hear about it, is that the singing isn't that good. But I think it's passable. It's fine. I mean, it's good songs. It's real creepy. You got Alan Rickman just being like so terrible. This is this judge and terrible, and I always love Joanna. I think that's such a beautiful song that's done well here. And it's definitely, I think, one of Tim Burton's more palatable choices of productions in the last 2 decades. If not the best, certainly one of the best, that's for sure. So I like it. I think it's good.
Yeah, and you're not a big you're very strict in your liking of Tim Burton. You've not been a fan of his
Mm.
other works in the past. So by you recommending recommending this definitely says like you really like this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's had a rough couple decades. Not much to recommend. I haven't seen Wednesday. I've heard it's really good, but I hated Miss Peregrine's. I thought that was terrible. And I don't know, just movies like Dark Shadows and just not good movies. His Planet of the Apes. I actually like his Dumbo more than most, but it kind of hit me at the right time. But I hate his Alice in Wonderland movie so much. Um, I don't know. I think he's had a really bad track record in the last 2 decades. So uh, this is, in my opinion, one of the most palatable of his movies. So there you go. Miss Peregrine's I just thought was so boring. Like nothing interesting happened. I I don't know. It was bad. But what do you have next?
So my next choice is a movie from 2000 and I believe 6 or 7. And it's called Extraordinary Measures, and this starred Brendan Fraser and Harrison Ford, and this is based on a true story. And it tells the story of Brendan Fraser. He's a father to two children who have a severe disability. I can't think of it. I'm looking up the plot. It's actually a movie from 2010, so I was off with my timing there. But uh,
It says here on Letterboxd with Pompeii disease.
Pompeii disease, yeah, that's the one. Basically, by the time that they're 10, if a child has it, then they die from it. However, their two children's that ha- their two children that have it have gone past 10 and they're still alive. However, their lives both come into jeopardy because of a rare disease. And so it's up to Fraser to contact the only doctor who has even come close to cracking this code in Roger Stonehill, played by Harrison Ford. And the movie is just very much a drama about Fraser trying to find a cure and going up against the medical establishment. It's definitely something you've seen before, but I think it was in the right mindset and time for me. I believe I went to see this with my mom, and I remember her crying, I think, because of it, because this movie's definitely a tearjerker in certain moments, because
Mm-hmm.
you want this father to find this cure, because his kids have they have the best spirits. They really do. And I think it's handled very well. Harrison Ford is Harrison Ford. It's very much like grumpy Harrison Ford. Some of his lines they give him, I'm just like, wow,
Yeah.
like that. Like it's funny because of just how matter of fact he says it. But I won't say any more from
Mm-hmm.
there. Overall, like I said, it's definitely not the best medical drama ever, but I do give it a recommendation.
Cool. Good. I've never seen that one. That one. So, my next pick is a dark comedy, which normally I'm not that big a fan of, but this was one that I really loved. I think from 2020. It's called Spontaneous, and so this was one that came out during the pandemic, and I think it was like to laugh at this plot in this movie during 2020 was like extra cathartic because it's all about this plague, I guess, that comes on this town where at any moment people just start exploding. Like and so like you have to make every moment count because you literally don't know if the next minute you're going to explode. And you have which is very dark, but also it is kind of funny the way they do it. And but it's also very tense because like again, you don't know if this is the last moment you'll like, spend with it with people. And Catherine Langford and Charlie Plummer have this relationship, and it's obviously there's a lot of trauma, but also they managed to bring some laughs. I don't know. It's a weird movie, but I thought it was really good, very effective, emotional, and somehow still making you laugh at this crazy situation. And I haven't seen it since 2020, so it'd be interesting to watch it again to see how I feel. But it was definitely, like I said, very cathartic in 2020 to this, with this, because that's you kind of felt like at any the way people were acting sometimes that it was like at any minute you would die. Like if you went into a movie theater or you want to, oh, you're gonna die. It's like, what? Oh no. And so I really loved it. And it was one of my favorites that year. And Charlie Plummer, I think, is one of the best young actors that we have. I think someday we'll be seeing him on the Oscar stage. He's so talented. And I love Lean on Pete. I love Words on Bathroom Walls. He's just a really good young actor, and Catherine Langford's charming as well. So if you want something a little bit weird, a little different, this is a good one.
I'd also put Catherine Langford in that. I think we'll be seeing her win an award one day, because I'm a big fan of hers. She was in 13 Reasons Why, but we won't hold that against her. I thought that she was at least the best part of that. But she's been
Mm-hmm.
in Knives Out. She's been in several movies that have gotten a lot of love. So I'm
Yeah,
happy.
love Simon.
Yeah, Love Simon too. That's a very good one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So people should check it out. Have you heard of it? Spontaneous?
I I have not. I was thinking to
Oh,
myself, is this pre-pandemic 2020 or post?
Post. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. And I don't know if it was just too close to home for some people. It just kind of people didn't really talk about it. That's what's great about the show is that we talk about these hidden gems. But there were a few people like I remember Austin Burke, he really liked it. There were a few other YouTubers that I was friends with that were kind of championing it at the time. And I'm normally not that big of a dark comedy person, but it just was like perfect fit for that moment and so well done. So, but what's your next pick?
So my next choice, we're taking things all the way back to the mid 50s, and I'm talking about the original The Honeymooners, starring Jackie Gleason and Art Carney. And I initially, because I knew what this show was, because I grew up watching the Flintstones, and the Flintstones is very much like the animated in the Stone Age version of the Honeymooners. Basically, Fred Flintstone is Fred Flintstone is basically Jackie Gleason, like in that show. So I knew of the Honeymooners from that. And I watched some of the episodes, and they're actually quite funny. I really did enjoy them. Jackie Gleason made the show basically as an homage to his childhood because he grew up incredibly poor. And in the words of John Pinette, he grew up incredibly poor, and he knew about it and didn't like it. So it was very much an homage to him growing up in the poor side of Brooklyn with barely enough money to get by, not even to have like a refrigerator, like that kind of poor. And so it was very much him like running back all the things that he grew up with. And of course Jackie Gleason was a really, really good actor in his day. So was Art Carney. Those two had great chemistry together. I love the chemistry that he had with his wife, he being Jackie Gleason and his wife. That was half of the fun of the show because he would be all bluster and she would just be like, just give him the evil eye for most of it. And just, he'd be so manic, but then at the same time, he could also be kind of sensitive. And there's just a nice dynamic between everyone involved. And really the show is basically, Gleason, basically Ralph Cramden and Norton getting involved in these harebrained schemes and then just like finding out when they mess up. And so it's mostly to that formula, but it's all handled so well and it's still holds up to this day. It's definitely not talked about enough because I mean it's from the 50s, which I'm sure for some is like in the dinosaur age, but I think it's very, very, it's timeless in a lot of ways.
And who stars in it again?
Jackie Gleason and Art Carney.
Okay,
Jackie
cool.
Gleason would be Buford T. Justice in the Smokey and the Bandit movies. He would nearly win an Oscar for The Hustler, so he had a long and lengthy career.
Cool. Yeah, I've never seen that. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. So that's good to hear it holds up. Cool. All right. Well, my next pick is another, I guess, little rom-com. It's an indie called Southside with You. And this is about the first date, the meet cute of Barack and Michelle Obama. And it's not really that political. There's a couple conversations that they have about do the right thing. They go to see do the right thing, and then they both talk about it. And but that's about it as far as like talking about like politics. It's just their how they met, you know. And so if you're like if you don't like and Michelle Obama, then I think you could still enjoy this film because it's just about their how they met. Like it's not like it's not a very political film, and I think it's really cute and well done. And I mean, I feel like we should be open to hearing the stories of people that think differently than us. Like if you're, uh, it shouldn't be like propaganda. I mean, it's just their story. So it's a cute little romance, and it's Parker Sawyer's and Tika Sumpter play play the young president and Michelle. So I think it's cute. It's a cute little. It kind of has the feel of like a Linklater before movie a little bit. Just kind of following them on this first date and being a fly on the wall of it. So it's good.
I remember when this movie came out, I think it was around the same time as that awful Suicide Squad movie, not the James Gunn one, but the other one.
Mm.
And I remember like because that was the time I started at my local theater working there. So I definitely remember
Yeah, you're right. That was 2016.
doing theater checks and popping in on like the scene where where the soon-to-be President Obama is campaigning, or not campaigning, but doing his political work. So I do definitely remember that, and I do agree with you. Because of the times that we live in, is like both left and right is just like, oh, they're not playing for my team, well then they're not worth the air that's worth breathing. And it's like, no, like I'm a big believer in you should hear what they have to say first, then be like, all right, I don't agree with that. And especially because it's like, if they're not playing for my team, like that's even more idiotic.
Right.
They might have a
Yeah.
valid point. You don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And they might have an interesting life, just because they have different views. Like their life is different, like they still have families and love, and like, it's ridiculous if we become too tribal. And I mean, this was released in 2016, so that was kind of ironic, with that being.
That was no accident. I know things are put on a release calendar definitely for like a reason, but that in particular, that was no accident. Considering the times that it was going on, that
Yeah.
was definitely no accident.
Yeah. But I thought it was cute. I mean, I reviewed it on my channel and I wore my Mitt Romney's t-shirt.
Oh geez, that comment section must have been fun.
Just to prove the point that somebody that obviously is different politically than the president could still enjoy the film. Like that was so there we go. But anyway, what is your last pick?
So my last choice is a show from the late 80s, early 90s, and I've recommended the American version of this, but I'm going to recommend the UK version of Whose Line Is It Anyway? Now, if you've seen Whose Line Is It Anyway, then you will definitely know of like the concept and the rules and all of that. Well, it's the same thing in the UK. However, it's like late 80s, early 90s UK, so a lot of that humor, I'm sure for some will be like, ooh. It's kind of like watching Monty Python's Flying Circus. Unless you're English, you won't get some of the references. But at the same time, it's still Colin Mockery. It's still Ryan Stiles. Stephen Fry is a part of the cast in some episodes, and I'm a
Oh.
big fan of him.
Uh-huh.
So it's still a very funny show. Like they still got scenes from a hat. They still got the dating service, or I believe it's called like it's called something different in this version. It's like mailing service, not mail-in service, but it's the same thing as dating service
Postal.
video,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's just a different name. And they still have props, and it's still really funny. So I like both versions of Whose Line Is It Anyway. Like if I need a quick laugh, I'll just put on like Whose Line Is It Anyway, scenes from a hat, and it's like bingo. And like in the
Yeah.
American version, there's a perfect one where there's a perfect one where crap, I can't remember which one. Oh, there it is. It's one where the premise is song is easiest ways to get fired, and then Colin walks onto the set and he's like, I'm a mime. Like it's funnier when he does it, but
Yeah.
it's just amazing.
I famously am not much of a fan of improv, but those guys are just masters.
I
They
don't know how they do it. Like I
Yeah,
really
they're
don't know.
incredible. They're incredible. So they are funny. A lot of improv can be really annoying, but they are masters at their craft. For sure. So cool. Well, my final pick is they have all of the Leica films on Pluto TV, which is fun. And so I decided to pick Paranorman. We hadn't talked about that yet on Hidden Gems. We have a whole episode of Obscure Animation on Paranorman that you should check out. Me and Stanford talking about it. And this is a really good movie. I think the connection that Norman ends up making with the girl, with the witch, and they're both kind of outsiders, and I think that's really like lovely and beautiful how it's done. The animation is absolutely amazing. There's lots of really funny humor. It's definitely more for, I think, older teens and adults more than for kids. There's some pretty scary parts, maybe for like little kids, but it's got some representation, which is nice and done well. It's just a really lovely little movie and a perfect movie to watch on Halloween, I think. So, and the stop, like I said, stop motion is so good.
Yeah, I mean, Leica has yet to miss, really, if you think about it. Like Coraline, Paranorman, Kubo and the Two Strings. Box Trolls, I've heard mixed things about, but I don't hate it. I think it is surprisingly good.
I didn't love Missing Link. Most people seem to really enjoy it, but I didn't love that one. But it's not like awful. I just didn't love it. But yeah, I mean, they have had quite the track record, and they just make such beautiful stop motion animation. Like even if you don't love a particular movie, you can't deny that like the animation is just so beautiful.
Yeah, and I'll never forget the teaser trailer for this movie. It's set to the song "Season of the Witch." I'm sure you've heard of it.
Hmm. Yeah.
I can't remember who sang it, but I'm sure you know the song, right?
Right, right.
Which is just considering who the villain is of the movie, that whoever picked that song, I hope they got a raise.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they make an argument for nepotism. You know, it's all been all this talk about nepotism. But thankfully, we have nepotism, or we would not have gotten like because they are owned by Phil Knight, who is the creator of head of Nike, who basically bought it so that his son Travis Knight could make movies. And then so
The
that's that.
thing
I mean,
that
that's how they're able to absorb all these. Like they've never made a profit, I don't think, of any movie. Maybe Coraline made profit, but they just have had one disappointment after another lately. So
Yeah, it's all that shoe money.
yeah. So yay, nepotism. Woo! And I think we're getting another one from Travis Knight coming up this year from Leica and
Yeah,
Travis. So yeah.
yeah, thankfully the talent has been inherited because Travis Knight is a great director.
Yeah, yeah, he did Bumblebee and Kubo
Kubo.
and yeah. So there we go. That's my last recommendation. So let us know what you have been watching on Pluto TV. If you found it to be helpful, we'd love to hear your thoughts. And Ryan, where can people find you?
They can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at RyanCam20. There's, of course, my YouTube channel just called Ryan Cam. Coming up, well, by the time this drops, I'll have begun my road to John Wick 4 by reviewing the first John Wick. It's crazy to go back and rewatch that because that movie's nearly 10 years old.
I've
Like,
never seen any of them.
well, we need to get on top. But rewatching it was fun, and that review will be on there as well. I plan on seeing at the very least 65. I will get around to Scream if time does permit, but I am morbidly curious about 65 to see how that movie shakes out. I think it looks interesting. But if you have not checked me out, please do.
Yeah, and you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes, and over at Hallmarkies Podcast, where I just finished up on Rachel's Reviews, finished up Jane Austen month this week. And so I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to be doing for Family Movie Night going forward for the rest of March and into April, but I'll let y'all know, of course. And gonna have South by Southwest and lots of fun stuff going on. So definitely make sure you're following. And thanks so much, everybody. And please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps us a lot. And we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Bye.